as per usual.
So that seems about right. He's going to go in circles. He's going to go everywhere.
Tip, tap, tip, tap.
Here we go again.
He wants to be part of the podcast.
Well, he's definitely going to be a part of it.
He's back.
What are we doing there, buddy?
He's circling us like a shark.
Could we...
Hi.
Mm-hmm. Okay. My name is Ryan.
My name is Jessie.
And this is the Something About Catholics podcast. And we're back after a week break.
Hello again, everyone.
And before we get started today, something that I think is kind of funny and I wanted to just throw into the ether is I've made it a habit at work as kind of a funny thing to always copy and paste into my status on my Microsoft Teams whatever the word of the day is. So,
Fun.
Yeah, it started off as kind of a Ryan Zarski and I, a good friend of mine, he would always go to vocabulary.com and I would always go to merriam-webster.com and we would each find whatever the word of the day was. And then whatever the better word of the day or whatever we deemed to be the better word of the day was what went into our status messages on our chat within work.
I've never heard of vocabulary. Is it always a word?
Yes.
It seemed like it could
mean,
also be a phrase.
It's a big website, so there's a gazillion different things on there, but
Neat.
they have a word of the day, just like Merriam-Webster has a word of the day. And so I'd made it a point, like me, like others that I have talked to. Actually, you know what? I take that back. I don't know anybody that does this. I think it might just be me. Might be like one of my human defects. But
I was going to say a cool thing, but you know.
Like on a Monday morning, I have my cup of coffee and I'm trying to figure out what that thing is, what that spark is that's going to get me into work mode.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that's actually going to spark my work. It's hard to explain, but it's like almost like I need like okay, I'll work on this and I'll complete this thing and get this little victory in, and then this will enable me to do the rest of my day. Probably semi-autistic or something like that in order to feel this way.
I was thinking it gives you a boost of dopamine or something. Gives you a little hit like coffee.
It might, but I don't know
For
that
your
I don't know that it's normal. But I think as life has gone on, I think I've figured out that I'm more and more on the spectrum maybe than
You can play games with yourself to
I
get
thought.
things done. It's not a bad thing to do.
But the thing is we've been doing this like back and forth, and then he and I like split up different teams, but we'll try to connect like once a week in order to get back to this. Anyways, this is a whole story. The reason I'm talking about this is just for the heck of it, I went on to Merriam-Webster this morning to see what the word of the day is. I don't really check it on the weekends. I typically just look at it Monday through Friday.
It's funny.
And it turns out that 2 days is cloister. And I think that that's kind of interesting because we're talking about a Catholic podcast, and I always think of cloister
Something about Catholics.
in regards to Catholicism. And so a cloister means to cloister someone or something is to shut the person or thing away from the world. And the example that they use right away is that the scientist cloistered himself in his laboratory all weekend to finish analyzing data.
Mm-hmm.
But cloister first entered the English language as a noun in the 13th century, referring then, as it still does, to a convent or monastery. More than 3 centuries later, English speakers began using the verb cloister to mean to seclude in or as if in a cloister. Today, the noun can also refer to the monastic life or to covered and usually arched passage along or around a court. You may also encounter the adjective cloistered with the meaning separated from the rest of the world as if in a cloister, as in, she leads a private, cloistered life in the country. Cloister ultimately comes from the Latin verb claudere, meaning to close. Other words that can be traced back to the prolific claudere include close, conclude, exclude, include, preclude, seclude, and recluse. The more you know.
Claudere sounds very French. It doesn't sound Latin.
Claudere. I'm sure if you break it up, there's, they used to call them, it's, there's,
Oh, like the parts of the word?
yeah. you have to break, like, that's the way most of Latin works, is that you have to, there's ways in which you can break up the word, because some of them have like tend towards like a feminine base and then others towards more male. It's weird. There's a whole bunch of weirdness as far as, I wouldn't say weirdness. Let's see how we pronounce it.
Claudier.
Claudier.
Claudia.
Claudier. Claudere.
It's Claudier. So I was off. Claudier.
It's okay. How would you know? Not speaking on Latin on a daily basis.
Well, there you go.
Monks at Belmont Abbey, where we went to school, are cloistered, right? No, they're not cloistered.
No, I typically think of cloisters in regards to nuns.
It's only nuns. I want to look that up.
Here we go. Cloistered life is nothing new within the Catholic faith. In fact, cloistered life is both a blessing to those who have chosen religious life and the community at large. Cloister comes from a Latin word, clausera, meaning to shut up. I feel like this is different than what we read originally. Interesting. In a sense, one is shut up within a cloister, but cloisters are a way for religious brothers and sisters to find solitude to pray, work, and make sacrifices for the good of the church and the world. There are 3 types of cloisters. A papal cloister, which is the strictest form, meaning the cloistered monk or nun does not leave the monastery, only under a few exceptions. They remain in their religious community for life. A constitutional cloister is less strict and varies. Orders that fall under the category of a constitutional cloister would be those that are contemplative, but involved in some sort of apostolic or charitable work that would necessitate more flexibility and freedom to leave the cloister. A monastic cloister is similar to a constitutional cloister, but guests may even be invited to stay at the monastery. And interaction with visitors is much more free and open as compared to the papal cloister. I would venture a guess and say Belmont Abbey probably falls closer to monastic.
Yeah, it says it's changed now. When I look online at the website about the monastery, they're not fully cloistered in the traditional sense because they prioritize communal prayer and a somewhat removed lifestyle, but they're still intertwined with everything going on at Belmont Abbey.
Well, so see all that? And that was all just from the word of the day. And we just happened to look at it this morning while I was getting ready for Mass.
The word of the day causes reflection and conversation.
Yeah, this is why it's fun. I actually have, I feel like most people ignore it and ignore the fact that I have it in my chat.
I bet more people notice it than you think.
Although there are on occasion where I will be in a meeting and I have one manager that I do know looks at it because on occasion he'll use it in a sentence. And I think he does it just to see if I notice. But I think it's pretty funny.
I would love that.
Yeah.
And I would think that you would love that.
It makes me quite happy.
It's like your love language.
I just don't want to let him know that I love it because then he might stop doing it. But I think it's pretty funny.
Yeah. I don't think you would stop.
And I also just figure maybe someday somebody will see it and just go, hey, that was a word that I didn't know. And now I know it.
And now we know lots of different definitions of cloister.
Knowing is half the battle. Where are we going with this? I wanted to use that as kind of an introduction. It's not really connected to the topic in any way, shape, or form. But
The Catholic theme, but not the topic for today.
exactly. Just a fun little side note.
But you had an interesting thought occur to you at Mass the other evening.
Yeah. I'm walking out of Mass and I just get like this thought about, it was the first time in a long time that I had gone to Mass on a Saturday evening instead of a Sunday morning. Jessica and I have made it kind of a tradition to go to Mass on Sunday mornings at our local parish because they have a Sunday morning Mass at 7:30. And normally when I tell people it's 7:30 in the morning, they're like, how?
Oh my gosh.
Like, why would you do that to yourself? But
on a weekend day?
I found it to be really, really nice because it's very quiet. The church is quiet. The sun hasn't quite totally come up yet. There's just a real peace that I find in that Mass that I've come to find that I need for my week.
Mm-hmm.
And especially towards like fall and winter, it's actually still dark outside when we go to Mass at 7:30 in the morning. So
Yeah.
it's kind of neat.
It's also nice to have the rest of the day afterward. It's like it gets you up early. It also gets your mind centered, and then you get to have a lot of your day.
Yep. I
left.
totally agree with that. So kind of interesting for me personally, because I have always been a big proponent of the Saturday evening vigil, simply because I can sleep in on Sunday. So I don't know if it's just growing older or getting more centered with Mass. I don't know what exactly is the thing that has kind of like led to exploring the Sunday morning Mass, because I know everybody's schedule is different. Everybody's like, for example, I know another side tangent here. Jessie was on kind of a vacation last weekend, and I was hanging out with a good friend of mine, and we started chatting about Sunday and the Saturday vigil. He took it a step further and into a direction I hadn't even thought about, and he said, well, you know that there are also special dispensations for individuals that work, not mandatory, but there are individuals that work both Saturday and Sunday in jobs that are like a doctor or a nurse, and it's just extremely difficult to get away to any Mass.
Mm-hmm.
And he was telling me about his sister and how the priest actually was able to give a special dispensation that because she couldn't fulfill her Saturday or Sunday obligation, that she was allowed to go to Mass on a Monday or a Tuesday.
Wow,
And
I
have
didn't
that-
know that.
Exactly.
That could be a thing.
Yeah, had no idea. So I thought that was kind of interesting because, again, you bring up a topic like, when did it become okay to start going to Mass on a Saturday evening and then have that count for your Sunday obligation? And just in that brief moment of kind of chatting about that, it spawned all of these other questions and conversation. So I just thought it would be neat to explore the topic and understand a little bit more about the Saturday evening vigil and how long that's been going on. Because from my perspective, it's just never a question I asked my parents. And it seems like historically, it's a relatively new rule for the Catholic Church.
Yeah, when we were looking it up, I didn't realize how new it was.
So let's see here. Okay. So just to kick this off, there's a couple different points to clarify here, and then we'll talk about it a little bit. So one of the questions that I've always had, and it's mostly because every church that I've ever attended has different Mass times. They have different Mass times for Saturday evening, and then they have different Mass times for Sunday morning. More often than not, churches that I have gone to throughout my lifetime celebrate Saturday evening Mass at around 5 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah.
So according to the Code of Canon Law, Catholics can fulfill their Sunday and other Mass obligations by participating in Mass, and this is in quotes, in the evening of the preceding day. Pope Pius XII, in the Apostolic Constitution Christus Dominus, set the earliest hour for such a Mass at 4 p.m. Rule 6. If the circumstance calls for it as necessary, we grant to the local ordinaries the right to permit the celebration of Mass in the evening, as we said, but in such wise that the Mass shall not begin before 4 o'clock in the afternoon, on holy days of obligation still observed. So for nearly 2,000 years, the Catholic Church did not have the concept of an anticipated Sunday Mass. Sunday obligation to attend Mass was fulfilled strictly on Sunday itself, typically in the morning, as evening Masses were rare due to Eucharistic fasting rules from midnight and canonical restrictions on Mass times, Liturgical days were sometimes reckoned from evening to evening based on Jewish tradition. This did not apply to fulfilling the Sunday precept. In the 20th century, pastoral needs began to emerge between the 1920s and the 1950s. Things like modern life, wars, shift-related work, industrial schedules, and the like made it difficult for Catholics, especially in Soviet areas or post-World War II Europe, to attend Sunday morning Mass. So, limited permissions began to take place for evening masses, such as in Russia in 1929. Pope Pius XII responded by relaxing the rules. Specifically in 1953, his apostolic constitution, the one I mentioned earlier, Christus Dominus, allowed for masses after 4 p.m. with a reduced fast. So I think that you had brought up a little bit about this fast before.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that it said that it took it down to 3 hours before Mass to avoid food and 1 hour before to avoid liquids. I was curious what it was before that, but you just answered that by the midnight thing. It used to be the midnight before the Mass on Sunday. So makes sense that they would need to come up with something different, especially for people that might be ill or need to eat more regularly if they're going to have an evening Mass. Change the regulations.
The question for me would be, if people were fasting from midnight, did that mean that they were going to Mass, though, like at daybreak, like 5:30, 6 o'clock?
I don't know.
Because if it's from midnight and then, if we go to 7:30 Mass, I typically haven't eaten since midnight. So that's not exactly
Forever.
Too crazy.
Yeah. But maybe there's some people that do need to eat more regularly. Or drink liquids.
In 1957, motu proprio sacrum communium permitted masses after noon. These changes were for pastoral reasons, but initially, a Saturday evening Mass still counted as Saturday's liturgy, not fulfilling Sunday's obligation. I think another thing that's kind of interesting about this is, I don't know exactly the context or the exact reasoning behind it, but I think if you were to get up and go to Mass on Saturday morning, you would be fulfilling Saturday's, not an obligation, but you would be going to Mass for Saturday. The readings would be different.
Yes.
And you would be receiving communion and so on and so forth for Saturday. If you decided to go about your day and then go back to Mass on Saturday night and attend Mass a second time.
Yep.
I think you can attend Mass and it will count as your obligation, but I don't think you're supposed to receive communion.
Oh, we looked this up at one point. It was not more than certain times. Oh, you can, up to twice a day.
But only if you attend a full Mass for the second reception.
So if you went Saturday morning and then Sunday evening or Saturday evening to fulfill your Sunday obligation, then you could.
Interesting. It looks like you can even receive it a third time, though you don't want to receive it a third time because that's given in case of danger of death. So,
my goodness.
We'll just stick to 2.
Interesting. Well, you learn something new every day.
Initial permissions for anticipated masses starting in the 1960s, which were post-Vatican II, with emphasis on active participation and adapting to modern needs, some bishops requested indults, otherwise known as special permissions, from the Apostolic See. Specifically in 1964, the Sacred Congregation of the Council granted faculties for Saturday afternoon or evening masses after First Vespers to fulfill the Sunday obligation in designated churches as announced by Vatican Radio. This was also happening in places like Italy, Switzerland, and Argentina. And then in 1967, the Sacred Congregation of Rites Instruction Eucharisticum Mysterium outlined conditions for these permissions. They were not universal, must be explained to avoid diminishing Sunday's importance, and times were set by local bishops. Pope Paul VI oversaw these as they aligned with Vatican II's liturgical forms. I know there's a lot of grievances with Vatican II, and I think that there's people that I've met throughout my friendship sphere in Catholicism that look down on people that go to mass on Saturday evening. I've heard that before. I do not feel that way, but I think that that's kind of interesting that it's another one of those Vatican II rulings that have caused a little bit of not schism, but just fracturing of individuals within the Catholic faith.
People reacting to change.
People reacting to change, and I think people reacting to change in tradition, maybe. Which to a degree I get, but also I think that from a Catholic perspective, it is indeed a liturgical reform that, if we believe what we believe, is correct and true.
Yeah. And we wait for it to come down from the Vatican.
Yeah. So, and
decision.
again, I mean, like this isn't that long ago. This is all within like the last 100 years, which is not, historically speaking, not that long ago.
Yeah. Less than 100 years.
So in the 1970s, there was a bishops' conference, or bishops' conferences like the U.S., that sought and received specific indults from the Vatican. So the U.S. got permission in 1970, then renewed again in 1974 and 1979, and that allowed for Saturday evening masses, typically after 4 p.m., to count as Sunday, but only were granted, and some pastors had to teach that it didn't replace Sunday observance.
Interesting that it took so long from Rome to institute it as a thing to the U.S.
Yeah.
okaying it, or it being okayed in the U.S., I guess.
I agree.
That rhymed.
Which means that, I mean, my mom or dad went to mass, growing up in the 60s and the 70s and so on and so forth. Then they were probably part of this, like, as it was happening.
Must have been a big deal when it changed, especially if you're working on Sundays and you want to be able to go on Saturday evening.
Yeah. I mean, it's never a question I've thought to ask, but I'm sure your parents went through the same thing. It would be interesting to...
My mom's a convert, so she probably didn't.
Your dad, maybe.
Probably.
Ask your... I was trying to think of who else we could ask in your side of the family.
Grandparents are... have passed away, the ones that are Catholic, to ask that question.
So in the 70s, specifically with the U.S., the rationale was purely pastoral, to help with workers and families, not necessarily theologically or tied to ancient Jewish practices, which was later denounced as a myth. Finally, in 1983, it was made universal and official. Pope John Paul II promulgated the new Code of Canon Law that became effective on November 27th, 1983, just in time for New Year's, 1984. This canon 1248, states, "A person who assists at Mass celebrated anywhere in a Catholic rite, either on the feast day itself or in the evening of the preceding day, satisfies the obligation of participating in the Mass." So, to clarify, not only does the vigil count on a Saturday evening for Sunday, but also the vigil or evening preceding a feast day or holy day of obligation. That's how I interpret that. And I think it typically works that way too.
I found a little thing about the history of vigil masses, and I thought it was interesting.
What's that?
It goes along with those specific feast days. For most of the 20th century, there were 13 vigil days in the Roman Rite before the feast of the Nativity of the Lord, the Epiphany, the Ascension, Pentecost, the Assumption, All Saints, the Nativity of St. John the Baptist, and St. Lawrence. And before the principal feast of each apostle except St. Barnabas, Saints Philip and James, and St. John. Though in 1955, Pope Pius XII, who we've heard so much about so far, reduced this number to 7 before the feasts of the Nativity of our Lord, the Ascension, Pentecost, the Assumption, the Nativity of St. John the Baptist, St. Peter's. It's the idea that there's 2 of them, and I keep adding an S. St. Peter and Paul, and St. Lawrence only. In the reform of the liturgy that followed the Second Vatican Council, these vigil days were abolished and were replaced with the 5, later 7, new eventide vigil masses that we now have in the Roman Rite today. Namely, the vigil masses of Christmas Day, the Ascension, the Epiphany, Pentecost, the Assumption, the Nativity of St. John the Baptist, and St. Peter and Paul. Here we need to pause for a moment to be clear about terminology. When we Roman Rite Catholics talk of, quote, vigil masses today, we usually mean masses of Sunday that are celebrated on the preceding Saturday night. But strictly speaking, this is an improper use of the term vigil mass. A Saturday night mass of the following Sunday is liturgically identical to the mass of the Sunday itself, and so is properly called an anticipated mass. The 7 true vigil masses are different. They have their own distinct proper antiphons. Is it antiphon? Antiphons? Antiphons, readings, and orations, which are not the same of those of the following feast days. In this respect, today's true vigil masses resemble the masses of the church's pre-1969 vigil days, and indeed the pre-medieval night vigil masses. But today's vigil masses differ in one key aspect from these older masses. As we have seen, the older masses were penitential, preparatory masses. In contrast, today's vigil masses are festal masses, which form part of the celebration of the feast itself. Interesting. This last part. In 1969, the Concilium, the commission charged with implementing the liturgical constitution of the Second Vatican Council, explained the character of the new vigil masses in these terms. Quote, the concept of the, quote, vigil has been radically changed. Vigils, as previously understood, are no longer kept. Now, on the evening before one of certain solemnities, a proper vigil mass is said. It forms part of the solemnity itself and is therefore a feastal mass.
Ooh, what's that?
Gotta look up a feastal mass. Just in case you were wondering, vigil is a period of watchfulness and prayer. I'm assuming it means for the feast day. Am I saying it right? Festal? Feastal? Festal?
Festal.
Mm-hmm.
Festal.
Festal?
Of, like, or relating to a celebration or festival.
I was looking for a definition. A festal mass is a Catholic mass celebrated on a solemnity or a feast, which are the highest ranks of celebration in the church's liturgical calendar.
Ah, okay.
The term is not an official liturgical rank, but a descriptive term for a more festive, joyful, and ceremonious mass than the day or ferial, Ferial, which means weekday mass.
Something to kind of add to that, because this is interesting where you're going with this. I found on adoramus.org a little bit about this mass, like what we're discussing regarding mass on a Sunday or a Saturday evening.
That's where I just read some of that from.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you? I don't think you read this piece, though.
Okay, good.
When Saturday night masses were first introduced, the term used for them was anticipated, i.e., they anticipated the Sunday obligation to attend mass. That term has unfortunately largely fallen by the wayside. One occasionally hears the claim that Saturday night masses are somehow vigil masses, but that term is wholly erroneous, since other than its initial bandying about, nobody speaks of the vigil of the 21st Sunday in ordinary time year C. Vigils normally have their own self-contained liturgies. The readings of the Easter and Pentecost vigils, for example, the church's greatest vigils, are utterly different from masses during the day on those solemnities. I've always wondered this because this is something that has often creeped into my mind when we get to Easter. And
Yeah, you see it called a vigil mass versus like when we just go on Saturday night, nothing says vigil.
and they're wildly different too, because there's a lot of I don't want to say pomp and circumstance, but there's a lot more a very different nature in the way that the mass is handled.
Yeah, like you could go to an Easter vigil mass and then go on Sunday and have it be a completely different experience.
Exactly. The same is true of the vigil mass for the Assumption on the evening of August 14th, which seems oh so familiar. On the other hand, regular Sunday masses or on Saturday nights simply use the Sunday readings.
So, like when we've talked about, for people that might not be Catholic, when we've talked about how you can go anywhere in the world and the mass is going to be the same any Sunday, any Catholic church that you go to, then we're also saying the same for that Saturday night for the most part.
Except
those specific vigil ones you just mentioned is
Right.
what I'm trying to clarify.
Exactly. The fact that they are not truly vigil masses is also evident from the American Holy Day practice adopted by the bishops in 1991. That waives the obligation to attend Mass on the Assumption, All Saints' Day, or the Solemnity of Mary, Mother of God, if they fall on a Saturday or a Monday. It's the Monday I get. No, I don't get it.
I think it's that they don't want to take away from what was supposed to be on that Sunday, like what day was supposed to be celebrated that Sunday.
But
Like what we would normally go to mass.
when Christmas falls on a Sunday, as it did in 2022, the solemnity preempts a lesser feast, which is why the Feast of the Holy Family is transferred to December 30th. And Saturday, December 24th, features the lectionary of the Vigil Mass for Christmas. The Holy See dealt with back-to-back celebrations by invoking the calendar of precedence. The higher-ranking feast prevails, even if the person attending the Mass intends to fulfill the obligation for the lower feast. The Catholic bishops of the United States merely close the circle by dispensing the faithful from a back-to-back obligation. Wild.
Like that wording, the lesser. Was it the lesser?
I feel like I've
What
heard
day?
John speak about high feast days and low feast days before, but actually putting it in context of the conversation is really making my wheels spin.
What are they spinning about? Things you haven't thought of, but you just do?
Well, like for example, the fact that in 2022, Christmas fell on the Saturday and then the feast day for the Holy Family was transferred.
I think I remember that. Remember it being talked about. You need to go this day, not this day. For us around Christmas, there's also, January 1st? There's also one where we need to go to church around January 1st. It's always a busy time. We're not just going to mass just for Christmas in the Catholic faith. Epiphany? No, it's too early.
No, for January is always the Solemnity of Mary, otherwise known as the Octave of Christmas, meaning it falls within 8 days following Christmas. But I'm trying to think back, like for 2022, did we go to Mass for Christmas Day? So if I understand correctly, the Holy Family, Feast of the Holy Family is it's a lesser feast day, but it's not necessarily a holy day of obligation. Maybe that's where I'm getting mixed up.
I thought there was something one year where we were like mapping out when we were going to go because there were so many
It
things.
was like 3 in a row or something. Because I'm looking back now at 2022. The next one for us is the Solemnity of All Saints, which is the day after Halloween. So that would be November 1st. But here again, you could probably find on October 31st a vigil mass where you could celebrate the Solemnity of All Saints.
Yes.
And then there's another in December before Christmas, the 8th, which is the Immaculate Conception.
Maybe it's because we're going on December Is it 29th? To fulfill the January 1st obligation that we have for the Solemnity of Mary. Maybe that's why it feels like we're going to Mass a lot, but it doesn't. There's days in between the 25th and the 29th.
It's just interesting to me that it has fallen that way. Or it fell that way.
I just keep thinking we're missing a day. That's why I was looking around.
You mean for 2025 specifically?
No, just around Christmas. It seems to me that we're going like 3 times really close to each other. But
I thought so too, but it's not. It's kind of interesting too, because there's only 6 holy days this year that fall outside of Sundays. I don't know that it was that way last year. Last year felt like many more to me.
Each year must be different with where things fall. That's why they have the years in there when we're reading things.
Is there anything else that you have regarding Mass and Saturdays and Sundays?
I do not. Well, all of that's very interesting. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. It's interesting how it is one of those subjects that in practice, I just don't think has ever really occurred to me to think about. And for some reason, going to Mass again last Saturday, which is the first time I've gone in a Saturday in quite some time, I was like, man, has it always been like this? And again, I just have never thought to ask parents or grandparents or anything like that. It's one of those things I just assumed has always been that way. But for whatever reason, I was walking out of Mass and I'm like, that would be an interesting thing to do a little research on and figure out.
It is interesting. And it's also interesting the word vigil, that we still use it so commonly, but that's not actually what it is considered.
Yeah, it's a little bit different.
Eventide is more accurate.
Festel.
We've learned lots of new words.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.